Hello and welcome to Monday's episode of the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast. I am your host, Craig Fowler, and I am joined on this occasion to look through the 6 games which took place in the Scottish Premiership at the weekend by a man who has been living it up since his team's rivals lost on Friday night. That is Gary Cocker.
I wasn't even aware they were playing, such as their fate at the moment. Hello.
Hello. And I'm also joined by a man who has basically been drawing little kisses and little love hearts on a photo of Theo Bear while praying that the end of the season arrives tomorrow. It's Graeme Thewliss.
Hello. I just don't want to. I don't want to watch Motherwell again. If Liam Kelly goes to the Euros, I'm just not going to watch. I'm going to draw the curtains and do something else. Just don't want to see him anymore. I just want to watch. Just don't want to watch football. Let's be honest. I just don't want to fucking watch football anymore. So here I am on a fucking podcast, having watched 6 fucking games of football to talk about them all. I just don't want to do it anymore. I'm done with it.
I'm still having fun, Graeme.
Fuck off, Gary.
Let's start this podcast. Right, like the last time that we did a Monday podcast last week, it was myself and Craig Anderson. We introduced some new features. We basically done one game where we done our usual style. We just kind of talked generally about the match, and then we'd done a feature for we basically done one for the remaining 7 games in the Scottish Cup without touching on the Dundee game. And we asked for feedback. Basically, anybody that's got in touch with us, apart from a few people got back in touch with us. Most people saying they like the 6-game format. However, I'm still pushing ahead with making a change. But what we'll say that I thought got lost in translation a little bit is that people were saying, like the fact that you cover every single game and don't miss some. The plan was always to cover a game, and in this podcast itself, we will cover every single game that took place the Scottish Premiership weekend. We'll just, for 3 of them, so I'm reining it back a little bit, but for 3 of them, we're basically just going to go with just to mix things up and to come at it from a different angle to then, but we'll still have general chat about each game and still cover them in general. It's kind of, as well as freshening things up, it also just makes our life a bit easier because, especially tonight, like this is Monday's podcast, but we're recording this late on Sunday. There's not a lot of time to watch all 6 games. So it's just easy to go with certain aspects of the game, talk about those, and then kind of fill in the rest for the highlights. So hopefully that clears things up a little bit, and hopefully you appreciate the fact that I've read it back a little bit, because we will begin with 2 games that we'll just talk generally about. And that is, even though they weren't necessarily great games in isolation, it is, of course, been a seismic shift this past weekend, or a couple of weeks, at the top of the Scottish top flight, with Rangers now in sole possession of the first place in the table after their 3-0 victory over St Johnstone following Celtic's 1-0 draw with Kilmarnock. And that's the game we'll start at, the game at Celtic Park, where, guys, let me go to Graeme first of all. I mean, it's just similar from what we've seen for Celtic a lot this season. They drop points at home against a team that you wouldn't necessarily expect Celtic to drop points to. But even more alarming for Brendan Rodgers' side in this one is that Killie thoroughly deserved that point.
Oh yeah, absolutely no. It was particularly watching the game, over and over again, you just kept being given the same warning from Kilmarnock. What's going to happen here is we're going to cross the ball in, and Donnelly actually had a really good chance that he probably should have finished much earlier in the game. Mm-hmm. Who's the other one? I think Donnelly had a second with potential as well. Kennedy had Armstrong had a really good chance at the back post. He kind of lashed that, and he knew he'd made a bad choice there as well. But he just kept giving them the same warning over and over again. If you don't put us away, a cross will come into the box and we'll score. Is the long and the short of it. And ultimately, that's exactly what happened. And it was the most inevitable thing in the world. You either, if you're in Celtic against Kilmarnock in this position, you either need to be in total control of the game. If you're going to see it at 1-0, you need to be in total control. Or alternatively, you need to go and score more goals. And it just had the most inevitable outcome to it as well. And in reality, Kilmarnock probably could have taken 3 points. I think a draw is probably a fair result in the grand scheme of things. But it's just, what are you doing? It was just screamingly obvious what was going to happen as this game progressed. And then inevitably, that's exactly what happened.
But it felt like a peak Brendan Rodgers in that, as you say, Killie really did have an amazing chance to win at the end. But that's not the Brendan Rodgers way this season, because that would have caused, I don't know if you can have mass mutiny within a football stadium, but, they would have gone absolutely mad. It would have been, Super Scoreboard would have been going mad. But it feels like death by 1,000 cuts for Celtic this season. there's not the absolute capitulation, the banter years, whatever you want to call it, that you had under Neil Lennon. You know, they're not going to Dubai and having
everybody getting COVID,
spreading COVID through the squad yet. Anyway, it just feels like a very just meh Celtic side. You know, I think this was Tony Ralston's 100th Celtic appearance, which is surely a statistic that has to, you know, send alarm bells going through.
I've really enjoyed as well. Everyone seemed quite thrilled and quite delighted that Greg Taylor was back. Now, don't get me wrong, I really like Greg Taylor. I think Greg Taylor's a really fine player. But if Greg Taylor's the difference between Celtic winning and losing the league, what the fuck are you doing? Like, what are you trying to achieve here? He is your left back. He is a good left back, and he can only play for an hour. And ultimately, when he came off, is when I kind of felt like Celtic really began to struggle. I know it kind of coincided with the fact that Kilmarnock then fully went for it at that point as well. But if I had to go and look at what the alternatives were there, that's for the moment. Like, Taylor's off. It's now a complete dumpling backline. Let's fucking go, lads. So yeah, just an inevitability come the end of it.
No, that's exactly what happened, because Killie, right from the start, targeted Ralston and thought he was one of the weak links at the Celtic defence. And then when Burnaby came on to replace Taylor, they targeted him as well. So McInnes had an excellent game plan and basically going at Celtic wherever possible, but letting Stephen Welsh and I was going to call him Liam Welsh, so that's not his name. Liam Scales and Stephen Welsh.
There are a lot of Liams in this game. Like, there's a lot of Liams.
But yeah, to go to the point as well, like Gary, it's a great one in terms of the death by 1,000 cuts. And I think when you look back at there's still a lot of time to go in Celtic, and they could still turn this around. I mean, they're absolutely, I don't know when he's still out for another few weeks, but like when Rio Hatate comes back, that is somebody that they're absolutely desperate on getting back, because they really need his quality in the middle of the park. McGregor and O'Reilly in this game, not very good, and their form has been struggling a bit recently. They just haven't got the blend. There's that farce they've kind of got going up front with Kyogo now a number 10. Like, he scored in this game, but otherwise he really didn't get many touches of the ball, because that's not how best to get the best at Kyogo. Adam Ida was hopeless in this encounter. He was doing a lot of running, but when the ball was going up to him, he couldn't hold it up. It was bouncing off him, and he didn't have, I think he had one or two touches in the Killie penalty area all game. And when you talk about... Just
really quickly as well, Phil, just to add to that as well, because I know you're much more tactically astute than I am, but the way in which they're currently playing Maeda and Palma, which is almost like a more withdrawn role, like a deeper in the park rather than up in support of either, does that not also kind of negate both of what they're very good at? Like, Palma's very good at getting the ball high, cutting inside and getting a shot off, and he's been really effective at doing that. Maeda is good when he's higher up the park. He can just terrorise. Like, he's not a good footballer in the grand scheme of like, ultimately not a 10 out of 10 footballer, but he just pushes the opposing fullback or wing back right back, because he just keeps them pinned there. But surely if you're giving him deeper, then he's gonna, if you go and close him down deeper, then he's got nowhere to go, because he's only going to go inside or go back, because he's not got the ability to beat players other than run onto balls. So, like, it feels like you're not only, as you say, Furuhashi, you're getting the least out of him, because you're getting less out of Palma, you're getting less out of Maeda, and then also by doing that, by backing up those two wingers into both Taylor and Ralston, you're kind of negating the thing that Ralston's good at, which is just fucking running, and Taylor as well, who's, again, as we know, adept at going inside or outside. You're cutting all of your good players off at the knees. Like, what are you... Yeah.
That's the strangest thing with Rodgers this season, and it goes to the feeling that his heart just doesn't seem fully into it. Like, if you think about Rodgers' first time, that was at a time where you really expected Celtic to overhaul the entire squad. Rodgers coming in, they won the title the season before, but they were rubbish under Dialogue, got beat by Rangers in the Scottish Cup semi-final when Rangers were still a championship team. And you thought, right, that's it. He's going to absolutely clear the house. He's going to bring in so many players, and Celtic are going to be completely transformed. That didn't happen. Celtic signed only 5 players that summer, and only 2 of them were any good, and Scott Sinclair and Moussa Dembele. But he made so many players in the team better, and in this team he's made so many players worse. But it's because he just seems to be sticking with what he wants to do. He's like, I want to have my centre forward. I want to have Kyogo dropping deep. I want to do this. I want to do that. And it's like, why are you doing this? Stick with the template that you had before. You had given to you by Ange Postecoglou, and everything would have been fine. And it shows you how much the Celtic board are hated, that Brendan Rodgers isn't even really getting that much stick from the Celtic fans, or at least nowhere near as much as I think he should be, based on what he's done this season.
It's also, if you have a look at the transfer business that Celtic did, I can't remember who it was, but somebody tweeted it out saying, you can't say that the board hasn't backed Brendan Rodgers. And if you add up, they have spent £25 million over the summer. But that £25 million has got them Navroki, Louis Palmer, fine. Nicholas Kuhn, Lager Bielka, bye. Odin Thiago Holm, see ya. Yang, Tilio, and Kwon.
Who plays for St Mirren now?
Yeah, it's, it is not. I know that with the old firm, and I think this is the problem, is that Celtic's transfer strategy seems to be try and find the diamonds in leagues of comparable size, Scotland, that you can then turn around to the English market for 3-4 times that. But none of these guys, maybe Palmer, but none of these guys are going to be doing that. And Tilly was just an incredibly bizarre one anyway, because who spends over a bag of minstrels on anyone from the A-League?
As we'll go into later on when we talk about Hibs, Aberdeen Hibs, when you've spent £1 million on an A-League player, apparently they're just definitely shite. You go back to Garanco for that as well, for another example. Anyway. But what I was going to say earlier is that I think if you look back, because again, the Celtic board in January, when everybody was like, Celtic fans were hoping, and I think we were expecting that they would actually spend a bit of cash. But then at the start of the month, they beat Rangers. And I wonder if Rangers had won that game, I think Celtic would have spent a bit of money and would have got a bit more, serious is not the word, but you know what I mean? There would have been a bit more urgency about the board. They wouldn't have just like, we'll be fine. And they were better than Rangers that day as well. So it just looked like, well, everyone's going to be fine. Celtic are kind of sleepwalking to the title. But regardless of how they're getting there, they're going to get there. And now, well, bloody hell.
they're sleepwalking the other way. It's like that scene in Step Brothers. They're going into the kitchen and putting bags in the oven. It's just not going well for them.
But just before we move on to the Rangers game, a bizarre thing about this one as well, like, there's been a few real changes in Scottish football over recent years, which are just helping out the bigger teams more. And that's the increased substitutes in every game, VAR, and there's one more that I can't remember as well. But in this match, Killie made 5 subs, and each one of their subs made Killie better, whereas Celtic subs made them worse.
Yeah. How about the Killie?
It tells you so much.
Just a quick word on the Ayrshire Killie though as well. Like, Ndaba in this game was absolutely tremendous as well. Like, both of Kilmarnock's fullbacks, I thought, in Mayo and Ndaba were absolutely brilliant throughout the game as well. Like, they, as you said, Craig, to begin with, like, they very clearly had a game plan. But as the game went on, they just got braver and braver. When it's dead easy to, like, for teams, you've seen it a million times, of teams going to Parkhead or going to Ibrox and then ending up retreating into their shell further and further. The more the game went on, the Killie boys, you could see them getting taller, getting stronger, getting faster. Like, okay, let's go. Like, we're here. We're 20 minutes to go. We're well in the game. And like you say, the 5 subs as well it is a ludicrous bit of the game at the moment, and it's not something I've never ever really sort of come around to. But it's nice to see Kilmarnock like using it to their advantage in this situation as well. I also feel that this is exactly the same game plan that Derek McInnes has tried to use every single time he's played Celtic, whether it's been like for Aberdeen or in a cup final, and it's almost worked like 8 or 9 different times, but never quite got there. And this feels like it's about as close as it's really got to. Like the other games this season, they felt like that Kilmarnock beating them was a little bit different to this. This one felt more like Derek McInnes goes to Hampden to try and beat Celtic, a vastly superior Celtic side, with Aberdeen. And this time, I feel like this is the one he's going to go home and be like, I was right every single time. I was right that time, I was right this time. All I needed was XYZ, and the answer as to what he needed was a big Dutch mentalist. I forgot about the other real change that benefited the bigger teams. And again, you can point to this one, and it actually benefited Killie, was the obscene amount of injury time that now gets played. But Killie equalised their injury time only a couple of minutes in, but then if there was a team going to win it, it was Killie who had the chance to do so at the end. So yeah, crazy stuff. Like, just flipping expectations all over the place at Celtic Park. Not so much a case at McDiarmid Park, where Rangers won 3-0 in a game that was pretty pish, to be honest. Like, there was really not a lot happened before Diamante opened the scoring with an excellent strike, as to be said. Then, yeah, not much again happened until half-time. Getting to the second half, St Johnstone bringing an extra attacker, try to go for it a bit more, don't really do anything. Rangers get a Stonewall penalty that should have been given in real time. VAR ends up giving it. That's converted by Tavernier, and then they get another penalty, which was definitely a penalty, which was converted by Tavernier again, and it's just a routine 3-0 win without St Johnstone really laying a glove on Rangers, and that's probably a disappointing team. You can see they would be happy enough with the first half performance to get there at half time. Only a goal down. Rangers have haven't really created much. Take play up in a second half, have a go at them, make them nervous,
it just didn't really happen for them. I think there was some decent performances in midfield and defence, but up front they basically got nothing out of Sidibe, who started the game, and Kip Koeka, who came on.
And it's actually slightly surprising because against Dundee last week, St Johnstone's tactic was essentially an incredibly dilute version of this, which would be to sit back and try to hit them on the break with speed. And they did that to some effect against Dundee, but clearly not against Rangers, who I hadn't actually seen that they've now developed a graphic for VAR review for their Twitter/X feed, which is incredibly on brand. And very much to be encouraged, I think.
You got to commit to the bit, Gary.
Exactly, got to commit to the bit. And it was quite bizarre, actually, because, as you say, these were two absolute stonewaller penalties. And there's been so much controversy and discussion this season about the handball rule. Oh, what? Don't even know what's a handball. I'll tell you what's a handball. Look at the highlights in this game, because that was just an open and shut case for once. But no, it was.
I saw St Johnstone fans comparing it to the penalty they didn't get against Hearts when it hit Cochrane's arm. The difference between the two of them is that it was exactly the same with Cochrane.
One was for Rangers.
Back. Yeah, well, there's that. But Cochrane turned his back on it the same way that Luke Robinson did in this game. But it hit Cochrane. It hit Cochrane on the tricep, which was the tricep was tucked into his body. His arm then was kind of out, but it didn't hit his hand. If it hit his hand, then it would have been a penalty. It hit the kind of upper bit of his arm, which was kind of in a natural position. Whereas this one, his arm was further out and it hits him further down on the hand. So that's why it was a penalty. Does that sound stupid as an explanation? Yes, it is. But those are the rules.
It's great to see people still jumping in front of Hearts bullets. It's really important that we return to solve problems from games weeks ago, just to make sure the Hearts aren't slighted in any way at all.
I read a St Johnstone fan saying, "What about this one?" So that I was just explaining the differences between the two.
Diamandi looks like it. Diamandi looks quite good, which is always very upsetting when Rangers or Celtic make a marquee signing and they look very immediately look class. I was in the midst of building jigsaws with my 3-year-old, so I saw this game in bits and pieces. But every time I looked up, like he was appearing in different parts of the field, either winning tackles or lashing in strikes or whipping in crosses or taking people on. I was like, you can do all of these things. You're doing all of these things quite well. I'm not really generally supportive of such things. But I suppose that's that inevitably at some point or the Rangers were going to sign a player that might actually at a game for Celtic. So
it's something they need, because they need somebody to help them break the press in the middle of the park. Yeah. They could too easily be kind of caught out in there and get kind of bogged down in the battle. So somebody that could just have that composure and kind of turn away, kind of like Glenn Kamara did for them so often. But Kamara never had a goal like this one.
No, he did. Glenn Kamara, he scored one like this against Livingston in a Betfred Cup. Round of 16 tie when he stepped onto it, leveled it, and I remember the commentator at the time said something along the lines of, "That's the only thing that's missing from Glenn Kamara's game," and he never did it again. So yeah.
Gary, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say we should probably pick up on Craig Levine's comments after the game as well, where he suggests that refs should get half the pay because they're only making half the decisions, the other half being made in the booth, as he puts it. And I get, you've got to do. I can see Graeme looking to the sky and realising that the decisions that were being made in the booth were actually the right decisions and should have probably been made on the pitch anyway.
Well, this is something that I feel like we've covered half a dozen times. I feel like referees don't really make decisions. It feels like a cop out in a number of them. And the first one in particular, the second one, right. Ball being fired around the box, it looked fairly obvious anyway, but this first one in particular, like Sterling very clearly gets the ball there first. The ball, I don't know, just make the decision. Like, you've got the safety blanket anyway, so just do it. But again, it feels like they're almost reticent to do so. Yeah.
There was a couple of reds dished out recently, but I was thinking that before them, that referees, when it comes to penalties and red cards, it just feels like this season particularly, they're just like, if it's a red or if it's a penalty, VAR will give it. I don't have to make this choice in the moment.
And I think the bigger issue actually is that it used to be that you would look at the Premiership fixtures and you would know, right, the referees for this will be some mix of Kevin Clancy, Willie Collum, Alan Muir, Don Robertson. It would have been Bobby Madden and Andrew Dallas back in the day as well. But now, when you look at the sheet, because a lot of referees are having to be used in other capacities at the moment, you're getting referees who are perhaps a little bit greener to the Premiership. And the last couple of games, it's probably been feeding into that as well, this notion that they might be quite happy for more experienced colleagues who are sitting in the VAR room to make the decision, potentially, for them, even in pretty open and shut cases.
Got a couple of things to touch on just before we get us to our first feature, and that is Cyril Dessers. So I really laughed out loud as he went through and goal. So I'd just been listening. I'd been listening to the show that Joel and Ewan had done for the Patreon. The first half of it appeared on YouTube. That was about the mental Aberdeen Motherwell game. And then the second half of it was just on Patreon, and that was Ewan talking about the Rangers' victory over Ross County and talking about Dessers. And Ewan was saying that had Dessers started the season like he's been playing recently, and then his form had been reversed, then he would have been thought a lot more highly thought of, and there's just a lot of people now who just insist that he's shite and he's not going to get any better. Kind of like comparing him to Antonio Cholak, who is still a bit more fondly remembered than maybe he should be because he had that kind of electric start. But this happened, so I was literally listening to this, and Dessers then went through as Ewan was saying this. And so when he, again, completely fucked a one-on-one with the goalkeeper, I just had to, just burst out laughing. But I do have a hot take. I've got a scorching hot take for this one. It's more of a prediction, actually. But Cyril Dessers is going to score the goal that cements the league title for Rangers. There is my prediction. It's going to be very Harold Brattbach in 1997-98.
Will this goal take him above, at £4 million, Theo Bear in the season scoring charts, or will this put him level with Theo at that point with that goal that he scores to win Rangers the title for £4 million?
Of course, it'll be less than Theo, actually.
Yep.
You're on board.
Yep. Not even just on board. I just genuinely think that's true. Like I think that's something that could quite conceivably happen. All of that, which is fucking alarming in a number of ways.
And the other thing I want to say, just on St Johnstone, so Graeme Carey again was like a deep line playmaker in this one. It's something Levine's been doing recently. It's worked in certain games. The county game, although I did think they were a bit weaker defensively due to him playing there, he was involved in the goal and he made their other chances. And I can see why Levine would do it. However, in a game like this against Rangers, where you're not going to get the ball in advanced areas very often, I think you need somebody like Graeme Carey who's actually capable of doing something rather than having further back and trying to keep possession, because you're just not going to have that much of it against Rangers.
Yep.
Right, so we move on to our first feature, which is Say Something Nice. Gary, you're in charge of this one, because we're going to now go to Dens Park, where Dundee defeated Ross County 2-0, with both goals coming from an unusual source this season.
Scott Tiffany, where have you come from? I think his only other goal for Dundee, I still don't think it was his. It was one of the goals against St Johnstone at McDiarmid, which really was Bakayoko. But I think Tiffany got a slight foot to it. But he has not had a good start to his Dundee career. He's had a couple of injuries here and there, but he has come into the team partly because up until recently, because of Owen Beck being Owen Beck, we've played a 3-5-2, which hasn't really had room for Tiffany. When he has been played, he's typically been shoehorned in as a centre forward, which isn't really Tiffany's game. So it's, for all the world, and I still, without wanting to sort of spoil the ending here, I still think this might be the case. I think he falls into a category that me and Graeme have talked about quite a lot, which is players who are
the Josh
too good
Mullen
for the championship.
The Josh Mullen paradox.
Yeah, they're too good for the championship, but they're probably not good enough to play week in, week out in the Premiership. I still think he belongs there, but nevertheless, he scored twice. And I think the biggest criticism of Tiffany since he's come to Dundee has been that, yes, he's taken on, he's been happy to take on fullbacks, he's been happy to drive at defences, but the end product has been missing. The final cross has been weak. The shots have been too obviously telegraphed, but in both cases, at the weekend, he did exactly what you would hope he would do. The first goal was really well taken. It was Luke McCowan played the ball forward. Costello played actually quite a smart little through ball, which managed to just put Tiffany in a straight foot race with, I think it was Loy Kaina, and he just slid the ball under Pickens, and that was just a minute before half-time. Dundee had looked marginally the better side, but it was a fairly pedestrian game. Not a lot was happening. But to put a totally different spin on the second half, County came out pretty all guns blazing for the first 10-15 minutes without really threatening at all. But then again, it was another pretty neat Dundee move, a little bit of interplay between McCarron and Bakayoko. The ball spilled to Tiffany on the edge of the box, and he just placed it again beyond the county keeper, who probably should have done better with it anyway.
George Wickens.
Yeah. He was not facing the however many 72 shots or however many it was that he'd
Saved 19. Saved 19 shots, a statistic that as a club you want to highlight. We made our goalkeeper do fucking loads of work. We are getting good value.
And he was so knackered after that he ended up just, letting in a couple against Dundee. But no, it was a routine. I think functional is a word that might be used by Graeme in regard to another fixture later on, but it was a pretty functional win for Dundee. But it's the sort of game that I think Dundee's of seasons past would have shat the bed in a little bit, to be honest. But that is now the highest number of clean sheets that Dundee have had since 2001-2002 in the Premiership by this point. We've already surpassed the points total that we had in the last 2 seasons we were relegated, so that's a good thing as well, and 5 clear of Aberdeen and Hibs as well. So I don't know how long Tiffany will necessarily kick about in the team. I think that what we did was it was a 4-3-3 we were playing, and that was partly because we're still waiting on a lot of centre-halves coming back and being fully match fit. So that's how Tiffany's managed to get his chance and probably keep his place in the team as well. Doherty is not a man who is prone to just playing his favourites. He'll play whoever's in form, which is why Boateng continued to be bench for Mo Silla, who
he was sensational,
terrific,
absolutely sensational in this game. Like of all the performers in this game, obviously Tiffany scored 2 goals. It's really obvious, but Tiffany was kind of on the fringe of the game for big chunks of it. Silla, on the other hand, he just ran the game, every single element, every single part of the game against a midfield county like Laturi. I think all of us quite like in terms of what he brings to that Ross County team. Particularly Tony Anderson, who thinks he's like the way Tony rates Laturi, the rest of us rate Laturi. There's a difference between 2 of them, but he does very well in there. Silla was fantastic throughout the game.
Yeah.
I thought he was the real standout in a game where you've got Owen Beck, who's obviously a star, McCowan, who's in great form, and Tiffany, who scored twice, to be head and shoulders above everyone else on the field. It's quite something. And ahead of a goalkeeper that made 19 saves in midweek.
And he did get man of the match as well, which was surprising because that's always chosen by whoever's really drunk in hospitality. So you would just expect to go, Tiffany! But no, Silla was tremendous. Beck did go off injured. Which
too bad.
Hopefully it is just, you could see it wasn't his best game. He wasn't bad. It just, he wasn't sort of as sparkling as he usually is. So
is he at all hampered by the change of system?
To be honest, I think he was mainly hampered just by apparently had a tight groin, which is always, I always feel like they should have a different way of phrasing that. But I mean, both he and McGee were still getting forward, even though they weren't wing backs. They were playing as full backs in this particular system. But
it's sensible for Dundee though. Like, again, Dundee having a system which isn't so reliant on Beck as well, because Doherty, as much as I presume he had some sort of reassurances from Liverpool that they would probably get Beck back, until he was actually back, he must have been having kittens, because so much of Dundee's play came directly through Beck. So it makes sense as well to at some point be like, can we survive without this laddie who won't play for us next year?
Yeah. This 20-year-old.
Yes.
And talking about the system and talking about Tiffany, well, just to kind of add, like Tiffany, yeah, he's not had a good time of it so far, but as Tony's brought up a few times, like he really stepped into the kind of worst situation where he's been signed, he's a winger, and he's been signed for a team that's played 3-5-2 pretty much all season. So yeah, he's not looked good when he has had these chances, but it's just not a role that he's kind of suited to, and this might see him kick on. But we could also probably say something nice about Dara Costello, because when he plays as a winger, he doesn't look completely useless.
Yeah, which is, again, a nice surprise. I mean, again, when he came into the team, this was in the horrendous couple of weeks when we didn't have Owen Beck and we weren't sure if we were going to get Owen Beck back. So he was played as a left wing back. He's not a left wing back. In this game, he played on the right. He just didn't have to worry about defending. You know, you've got Jordan McGee behind you, who is an incredibly just competent, sturdy defender. You don't need to worry. Aaron Donnelly as well, who's played in the back forward next to Joe Shaughnessy. Basically just an incredibly steady, competent back four, which meant Costello could just go and do his thing, running at the county defence, picking up a pretty daft early yellow, which I think was one of the reasons why he was taken off relatively early, but nevertheless, I think it shows that he has some role to play in this team. Even Owen Dodgson came on and didn't concede a goal, which was, I think, the first time he's done that for Dundee. So things looking vaguely competent at Dens Park. It'll never last.
Just briefly, Gary, as well, how are Dundee performing so well when about 3/4 of your starting 11 are very clearly malnourished?
They will not get fed until we secure top 6. It is a very fine line to be walking.
Again,
I'm a little bit concerned about Scott Tiffany, if I'm honest with you.
Tiffany, McCowan, Cameron, like these guys, they could probably do with just a poke of chips, maybe. Like they genuinely, and maybe that's a doc thing. They just look incredibly. They all look super skinny. So maybe they're just incredibly fit. I don't know, but they genuinely, Tiffany particularly, he just looks underfed. Like just eat something, man. Get some of those Domino's cream eggs.
Oh, I can't wait to try those. But no, they it's a very small and scrawny team, but nevertheless, it's a small and scrawny team in the top 6. So who am I to judge?
You're having a good time.
I am. You're for a good time, not a long time.
Right, let's move on to another game which goes under the microscope, and that is Livingston 1, St Mirren 0. Livingston's first league win after a run of 18 games, and it means that things are on at the bottom of the table. It doesn't seem like it's going to be a case of Livingston just going off without a fight.
Oh, they are. Come on. I know they're doing this big build-up like Livy and going like, fair play. Right? They got their win. Good for them. They remain three short of county, 8 short of safety, 9 short of safety.
I mean, I think they're still going to have a fight just because I think the county are that guff that I wouldn't be surprised if Livingston go to county next week and get all 3 points, and then it really is on.
Okay.
If they lose next week at county and it's back to 6th, then you think that's maybe their chance of winning gone. But I wouldn't be surprised. However, as Martindale said himself, to be fair, so recently Livy went to Killie and played very well and didn't get anything out of the game. This game, they did not play well at all. St Mirren undoubtedly deserved to win, but Livingston managed to get the 3 points through a combination of things, mainly to do with St Mirren.
Mainly to do with Mikael Mandron.
Yes, well, Mikael Mandron, and so the first half, especially the first 20-30 minutes, was dominated by St Mirren. But they never really, other than the glaring chance that James Scott missed, but he would have been offside anyway, they didn't actually create anything. Like, their balls in the box were, well, firstly, for St Mirren, I thought they were a bit too reticent to put balls into the box and to ask questions of Livingston defence. And also when they did put balls in, they were not of very good quality and a lot of times hit the first man. But Kilty was kind of running everywhere in the early going. Boyd Munns played quite well in that period. There was a number of things going for St Mirren. They just couldn't seem to fashion any chances. And then they lose like such a... Like if you're Stephen Robinson, but we'll get to Stephen Robinson and his rage soon enough. But you've got to be furious with this goal because it's a punt up the park for the goalkeeper. Alex Gogic just completely loses track of the flight of the ball. He could easily head it away. Instead, he gets underneath it, heads it on. It goes for a corner. Corner comes in. They don't win the first ball. They don't clear it the second time. I think I had to look at it a few times. I think that's going to be a penalty if Livingston don't put the ball in the back of the net. I think Fraser's got his arms out, he's engaging with Obileye, and he doesn't see the ball coming, but his arms are definitely out, so it would be given as a penalty. Obileye has a shot, Hemming, dreadful attempt at making that save. Just a catalogue of errors to give away that goal. But then you get to the second half, and it's just, again, it's more domination, and this time they're actually putting decent balls into the box. So Livy make a change. Michael Devlin comes on and they go to a back 3. And this did help because it wasn't quite as much one-way traffic as it had been in the opening 20 minutes of the half. But they get the penalty. And Jesus wept. What was this attempt from Mikael Mandron? Absolutely pish. And then he misses another sitter later on. So yeah, just not the best of games for Livingston to say we can definitely stay in this division. But you never know. They needed the result. They needed a confidence boost. They got one out part of this last week. They've got lucky in this game, I would say. But then they could take that on, and Stephen Kelly playing again as well looked quite good.
That was easily the best he's played this season, like by miles and miles and miles. And like you're finally getting to see, like all season long, I've been looking at Nubly, being like, where are you? Like what's going on here? And maybe continually telling a player that they want to sell them over and over and over and over again is quite detrimental to their confidence, perhaps. Yengi looks like a bit of a handful as well. Like He doesn't strike me as being a wonderful footballer, but then again, Livingston had another big rock to play up front who then ended up Scotland centre forward as well. So again, it's weird and wonderful things happen. And like David Carson feels like exactly the same sort of signing as signing Jason Holt to play within there as well. It's that sort of player, as somebody who does sensible things without doing remarkable things.
Yeah, other than the terrible giving away the penalty, which, like, not only should he not be sliding in at that moment, he also he doesn't give himself enough space to turn when Olasanya runs at him, and that was just very poor. You should know that Olasanya is rapid, and he just doesn't give himself enough of a gap.
Yep.
But other than that, I thought he played well.
Yeah, I thought Sangari was good as well. He looks like one of these guys that's just able to step in. It's a really difficult way to try and describe what sort of player that they are, but like his anticipation and his way of stepping in for interceptions within the game looks like he's been at a higher level, perhaps, or schooled at a higher level than perhaps Livingston generally. That's not a criticism of Livingston, just like he's someone that looks like he reads the game very, very well. The number of times in the second half, St Mirren were trying to play sort of through balls through, and every single time it seemed like it was just stepping Sangari, it was just dropping onto Sangari's like instep of his foot, because he was like, well, I'm here, of course I'm here, this is the thing that I do, it's what I'm good at. St Mirren were hopeless, man. And James
Scott, absolute pish.
Yeah, like I really wanted us to re-sign him in January, because I was like, well, we can fix him. Of course we can fix him. I mean, we can. Fucking can't. He just quite clearly just isn't really all that bothered. Like, he'll quite a criticism of a player to just say they're not all that bothered, but from where he was to where he is, he had an awful. He looked like he had more of a drive around his play at Motherwell. Even at St Mirren, they're even playing him in the position that I think James Scott should be playing in. Everyone looks at him and goes like, Hibs did this quite a lot as well, and went, you are quite tall, you should be a target man centre forward. He's not. He plays off a centre forward, and he's much better at doing that. St Mirren are doing that, and he's still not really contributing enough.
Although I will say that had St Mirren signed Curtis Main, who I believe was one of their other targets, given the small cameos I've seen so far, that would have gone much better for them either.
He's had a good time in India, hasn't he?
Oh, a very good time. Very good time, making them very, very slow.
That's not good. One thing I should say as well before we get on to Robinson is that Michael Nottingham, not a player that Livingston fans have really had liked much this season, and even for watching this game, not much of a footballer, I would say, but bloody hell, what a defensive performance he put in. He was heading absolutely everyone away, and just basically ball came to him. If it was anywhere within 20 yards of his goal, he was kicking it far down the other end of the park.
That's how you defend.
Exactly.
And just one shout out for Shamal George as well, a player who has had a miserable season. I don't think it's unfair to say that. Like, he's just, I don't know whether he's been playing through injury or whether it's been a lack of confidence or something or anything along those lines, or the fact that players in front of him have also not been performing to the levels that they're capable of. Obelai had a better game than he has in a while as well. Saving a penalty, winning the game, like, you're the star on the day. Like, there's definitely something there with George. I don't know, as I say, injury, lack of confidence, or just a player developing or taking his time to get there. I think there's something there. Fingers crossed for him, he can turn that around for the rest of the season. Although not fucking too much.
Stay with you, Graeme. Stephen Robinson arguing with his own fans. Stunned at all by your ex-manager?
Absolutely shocked and amazed to see Stephen Robinson arguing with people publicly. At least it wasn't to say at a Christmas market this time, there is that. But yeah, quite funny. Like, I did find that quite funny. I was on the radio. I was listening to the radio in the car coming back from Tynecastle yesterday, and they were talking. Oh, Steve, someone's gone down the tunnel. And I was like, what's going on here? And then Michael Stewart came on. And he's like, actually, it's just Stephen Robinson going to square up to a fan. I was like, yep, that sounds. Because they were talking about like a St Mirren fan going down a tunnel, and I was like, they had to go fucking miles to do that. Like, they had to cross the entirety of the pitch, past however many people, and then peg it down the tunnel. Like, I don't think there's a football fan in the country that has that cardio. So the idea that had happened was very confusing, but then as it turned out, Stephen Robinson just stormed over to square up to a fan. And like, if you watch the footage, right, there's a guy there who I think it's who he's squaring up to, who's just standing there just like, what? I'm right, you're wrong, shut it. She's like not even mildly fazed by Robinson in his face going mental at him. So funny.
Right, and now it's time for He Said, She Said. And this week it is on Neil Warnock's comments after Aberdeen 2, Hibs 2. So let me read them out to you. So Warnock, there's a couple of things I want to mention, but we'll start with the funny bit of it. which is Warnock saying that when David Marshall came rushing at his goal and contested with Bojan Majowski for a bouncing ball, and Marshall corrected with his fist as he was trying to punch the ball away with Majowski's face, that Warnock thought it was manslaughter. So is Bojan Majowski dead?
Yeah, I see that he finished the final 90 minutes. Right, okay, I've misread that. That's on me. I'm not a strong reader.
It's, I mean, and Ewan, I think, would want this point to be made, but there is no such thing as manslaughter in Scots law. There is culpable homicide.
Ah, okay.
Same thing. And
Aberdeen?
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think Warnock cares at all about any kind of Scots law differentiation between English law.
Yeah. It is a point.
He's a big fan of English law. English law is the best.
Yes, but yeah, R.I.P.
I mean, he's right. It should have been a penalty.
Ones.
Should it?
Yeah, of course it is. It's one of those ones that's when
He
it's
won the
like...
ball.
If you did that out in the street, Graeme, you'd be done for manslaughter.
Yeah, I watched it.
Did he not go through Majowski's face?
I think Marshall gets there first. As such, is not a penalty. If anything, Majowski's late on Marshall.
All right, okay, fair enough. I thought it should have been a penalty, but
there is one in this game that should have been a penalty.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't think it's this one. I watching the clip. I thought the Marshall gets there first.
Right, okay. It's one of those ones though, because it's like a goalie going with his arm, or it's the same when it's like a defender going with their head. If you go in with your feet and you get there first, and then you follow through into the player, and you do so in a manner that could cause them injury, which is definitely, if you're punching somebody in the face, definitely can.
Yeah,
then it's a foul. But if you do it in the air, it seems to be this weird thing in football. If you do it in the air, then it's fine. I
do generally agree on that point. Like players who leather other players in the air and then get away with it. That the goalkeeper and a hand is different though, because a hand's a hand. It's a hand. It's not a head. It's not a skull, which is much heavier and firmer. As well as that, from a tackle perspective as well, generally both players aren't coming to meet in the middle of that as well. Generally, one's slightly more static and one is moving, whatever else. Whereas this one, it's a bouncing ball. This is a really rare moment. There isn't a comparable version of this for a tackle or a header or anything like that. Because a goalkeeper, it's different to anything else within the game, and as such, because Marshall gets there first, fine.
And we could definitely say that Hibs absolutely should have had a penalty, and I do not understand why that's not.
No,
it's okay though, because decision making has improved to 91.7%, I believe. I think is the official line on that one. So yeah, someone
VAR is there to pick up on these things as well.
Someone actively handballing it in a very clear and obvious fashion is that doesn't count, evidently. Yeah,
it wasn't even, because at first, before I saw the game back, I thought, going by the description, I was picturing someone jumping and their arms just flailing a little bit and hitting it. But no. It's a very clear, not even just a shaping of the body. I don't know what the step beyond shaping is, but it is as blatant as it comes.
Can I just say, when we're talking about body shape, right? There is not a team in the country with a weirder collection of, like, player mechanics, we'll say, in terms of players moving. Because Lewis Miller does not look at any point like he knows how to run like a functioning footballer. There's probably a reason for that as well. But Lewis Miller doesn't move, and he doesn't move. It looks like someone's told him about running, and he's figured it out from that, rather than just running like someone's told it. Newell's weird as well. Abita's weird. Jair's weird. Like, there's 3 or 4 players within their team who look like some. It's a very weird collection of mechanics in terms of how they move. Miller's the worst of them, but the Newell, Abita, and Jair as well. Weird. Like, just really odd.
Hibernian's Ministry of Funny Runs.
Yeah, basically, yeah. It's a very difficult thing to put a finger on, but see, when you notice it, I can't not notice it. And I don't know if it's just because I know Miller's is so weird, because he's like an athlete first and a footballer second, but then you add the other ones into it. I don't know if I'm just noticing it more because I'm looking at Miller so much.
And the other comments that Warnock made, which could get onto basically what was the theme of the match, was that he said, it was a cracking game, we deserved to win, 26 shots on goal, the best we've played since I've been here, but the goals we conceded, oh my goodness me. And you can say that about both teams, because Jesus, neither of these teams can defend worth a lick. Nectar Triantis, he's just not any good, is he?
Nope.
Like
No.
we talked about this earlier. He was signed from Sunderland for £1 million. He was loaned to Hibs. I done a podcast with you, and we've done a series of podcasts in January. We looked at the signings every single team was making in the top flight. I looked at Jantis and I was like, I don't think he's any good at all. And so it's been proven so far. So the Aberdeen equaliser, he is far too deep, and so he plays him onside, and then he's just too slow to react to the loose ball. So he's too deep, and then he just stands there when he is too deep. So that's just two levels of uselessness right there. Miller and Fish are hilariously bad for the second goal. Miller is just...
Duck goes past him like he's not... It's not even like he looks up and goes, Miller's here, so I'm going to go this way. He just pays him no heed whatsoever, and by the time Miller's figured out what's going on, he's already 3 yards past him.
Miller has improved from last season, but I still don't think he is a player at the level that Hibs needs. Yes, Tony said it before that he's got everything that you kind of want in a Scottish Premiership fullback in terms of what he's good at, which is like a lot of energy, a lot of hard running, just bounding up the pitch. Doesn't seem... plays the game like he doesn't have much between the ears, like just gets on with it, and just it doesn't matter how much he's going to arse up, he's just going to go back and do it again next time. But I just don't think his talent level is good enough for where Hibs want to be.
Imagine like Hearts had picked up Callum Patterson on the way to a game is basically what Lewis Miller is. like Callum Patterson, they just saw him at a bus stop and was like, you can come and play fucking right back for us in the bus. And then that was how his career started, is basically what Lewis Miller is.
And then on the other side, Aberdeen, the first goal, Gartavin getting bullied by Malida. And it's something that Tom said recently, I think when we done the YouTube show with Tony after Robson was sacked, was that Jensen and Gartavin they're both all right, but they're just too similar to each other. And it's weird as it is to say, because I do think he's not very good and a complete bomb scare. I think they do actually miss Rubezic. They miss a big bastard in the middle. They miss somebody who doesn't get bullied by Malida in that instance.
I can see the logic, but just he's hopeless. He's an absolute dumpling. Just like, instead of signing, do you know what we should have done instead of signing 2 players that were too similar? Just not sign 3 bad centre halves.
At least he would be tall enough to not let the ball bounce over his head, though.
True.
Yes, Nicky Devlin for the equaliser. That was just judges it horrendously.
He's not even judged it. I mean, this is judges manslaughter. It's been a bad day for the judiciary in Aberdeen.
And we can make this a bit of a twofer in he said, she said, because we've also got Nick Montgomery saying it was a good one for our fans to watch. As Tony pointed out, fans like winning, Nick. Yeah. You're not doing an awful lot of that.
He needs to stop talking. Like, he just needs to... Every time I see something from Nick Montgomery, I'm like, this is just getting... Like, you're talking yourself into a bigger and bigger hole. Just stop talking. You need to stop talking immediately.
I, for one, cannot wait to see what his comments are after next Saturday's game at Easter Road, because my hope is that he talks himself not only into a hole, but into outer space, because I can only imagine how Tony and Duncan, among others, will react if he is saying, well, that Owen Beck sub-player, isn't he? After he thumps in the winner for us in the last minute.
And we shall finish off this episode with fill in the blanks. Lawrence Shankland will end the season with blank goals. Graeme. He's got 25 in the domestic campaign, 26 if you include his one for Scotland. How many is he finishing on? And for Hearts, let's say.
Lewis Shank will end this season with more goals than he has vaccines.
It's already done that. He done that with his first one.
Yeah, fine.
So I've broken down the numbers of this one. So there is 12 league games left. There could be as many as 15 games left for Hearts if they get to the Scottish Cup final. I think his scoring will slow a little bit. Hearts' fixtures are going to get a bit tougher. Will he get to 30? I think he will. So I've settled on 32 for this season.
Have you still got to play Hibs before the split?
Yes.
Okay, that adds a couple on.
Yep.
Let's go with 32 for me as
32,
well.
right. Lovely stuff. He was at it again this weekend in Hearts 2-0 victory over Motherwell. And Graeme, what was your thoughts on this game? I didn't actually see this one. I was at my niece's birthday, so I skipped out on this one. But what was your thoughts on another Hearts victory?
I was really, really pleased that I drove like Colin McRae to get from Fraser being at gymnastics to then absolutely tearing through to Edinburgh in order to make it. This was a complete fucking waste of my time. Broadly, right, and I said this to the Terrace group chat, this was about as until Rangers St Johnstone today was the most functional win of the weekend. by miles and miles and miles. Motherwell had a handful of chances within the game. Lennon Miller should really have scored. The one thing which is potentially going to hold him back slightly is just he doesn't have like an electric turn of pace. I don't think it really matters depending on where you want to play him, but we played him slightly further forward in this game. So him bearing down on goal, I think in 6 months' time he's more prepared for a finish like this. He's been out for 3 or 4 months, so he's not played an awful lot of football recently. I think another 6 months down the line he finishes this, no bother. He was very good in the game, I would say, for Motherwell. He was the real sort of high point in the game for us as well. Jack Vale had a chance for Motherwell as well, but broadly it was a first half. It was Hearts doing Hearts first half performance of getting the ball into the wide areas, trying to create overloads in the wide areas, and Motherwell just shifting left and right and just cutting it off. Like, there was very little chances, and there were very few chances, particularly in the first half. Again, just a reasonably decent contest. Start of the second half, Motherwell kind of came tearing out, which was very strange for just for like a wee sort of 10-minute spell. Motherwell looked like they were really going for it, but like ultimately, like, Hearts have Lawrence Shankland and nobody else does. Like, it's terrible defending from Motherwell trying to play zonal with Casey at the front of it, who just watches the ball sail over his head. Like, if you're playing, you saw a few times today in the Rangers game, particularly as well. They would play the same sort of system, sort of zonal thing. St Johnstone putting crosses into the box. I think it was Lundstrom at the front post, and every time the ball came in, all he did was just nod the ball over the box or over the bar. Like, fine, like, just win it and then fucking deal with everything else afterwards. Like, it doesn't matter. Casey just stood and watched the ball sail over his head, which was really good. Straight onto Shankland's massive dome. Thumped that into the ground and to make it 1-0. Like, again, totally fine. Like, good performance. Hearts made a plethora of substitutions as well. What was the eventual second goal scorer coming on? But again, by that point, by the time the second goal went in, Motherwell were kind of chasing the game an awful lot. Kettlewell had tried a few things to try and open up the game from us in terms of switching Devine from right to left, which doesn't really work because Devine doesn't really have a particularly strong left foot. It also removes Georgie Gent as a threat as well, who again had a pretty good game for us as well. Gives us a different threat in that O'Donnell can actually win headers when Kelly's goal kicks him out, so I understand that was what it is. But Motherwell just have, like, there's just so little depth in the squad as well. We saw Mark Ferry coming on, that was after his like completely uneventful loan spell at the start of the season as well. Nicholson comes on, looks okay in bits and pieces. I don't think he's fit enough for any more than sort of half an hour, 40 minutes in the meantime. Abika just offers nothing, man. Like, he just brings nothing to a Motherwell side. Like, Zadrowski had a really good game as well, but again was on the losing side. Like, frustrating for Motherwell, but ultimately, like, Hearts are just good. Like, there's not another way. There's not a particular other way around that as well. Like, Hearts changed the entirety of what is like a midfield five ultimately with is it Limbikisa on the right and Cochrane on the left, through both injury and moving players around within there as well, but changing the entire midfield five and replacing them with 5 guys who also probably played a little bit better than the guys that started. Like, what is it? Like, Motherwell have fuck all in terms of squad depth, so what you got to do?
Yeah, I think Hearts from not so long ago looking like their squad was a bit patchy in places. It's just got real strength about it, and that's been helped by improvement in players. So Vargas, excellent with the goal. Vargas has always been somebody that's looked like he's had good potential, and always looked like somebody that was potentially worth signing at the end of this loan deal. Recently, he's added a bit of that finishing quality that means that Hearts should definitely pay that 400,000 that it is rumoured that it would cost to get him. And guys like Alan Forrest, like 3 months ago, it looked like his Hearts career was just trailing out to an inevitable end. He had a decent start when he first joined for Livingston, but then was very poor for basically most of the time in between then. But he's still, in terms of his kind of final decision or his final touch, can sometimes still let him down, but he does a hell of a lot of running, and he's brought a real urgency to this Hearts attack that's there now, but was missing before he started having this great run of form. And Callum Nieuwenhof, from somebody to me, again, like, this is even closer. This was like the Dundee game where he turned around, so it's only about 6 weeks ago, but I was thinking, he doesn't do anything except for pass the ball sideways. But since then, he's been excellent. He does a lot more going forward. He takes a lot more chances on the ball, and he's just been a lot more dogged. So not only is he keeping possession, he's also winning it back. And so he's seen it, I'm thinking, the build up to a couple of the chances that Hearts had in the second half. He's going, interrupting a Motherwell move, winning it, and then playing it forward. And also in this game, Natty Atkinson and Cammy Devlin. Devlin's been injured. He came off the bench. Atkinson has been in and out of the team this season due to injury, but he's actually played very well under Naismith. He's another kind of one of Naismith's success stories in terms of improving players. He'll probably start at Ibrox next week because Lembekiza has gone off the boil a little bit. But there's just now so many options in the squad and options that you can actually rely on rather than what was there before.
Lembekiza was a weird one because the entirety of the first half, he kept getting the ball out of the right wing and just stepping on it, and not actually moving at all with it, particularly then eventually just giving it up to Gent, who, again, it's not... the defensive side of Gent's game is not why he plays for Motherwell. And then literally just before the halftime whistle blew, the ball came out to him and he just attacked Gent with his first touch and disappeared past him, and then was immediately hooked at halftime. I was like he's literally just figured out just before halftime that the way to do this is just to go and attack rather than try to stand the ball 100 times. Also, Neuenhoff looks about 45, by the way. A man who's apparently 23 years old, but when you see him, like, you genuinely, he looks like a 90s footballer being like reincarnated. Very, yeah. Anyway.
I think what has been shown over the last couple of weeks, and it's stating the obvious, but clinging on to Shankland in January has already paid dividends, because that's a 14-point gap to Killie. It's actually a bigger gap down to fourth than it is to the top of the league. And I think someone who I won't name was doing the maths on whether or not Hearts could actually potentially get up and maybe finish second. Would that be fair to say?
No, that's not going to happen. Definitely not going to happen.
I was hoping I could tempt you into saying that.
No,
on air.
too much of a gap. What I'm looking at for the rest of the season is who's going to win the Scottish Cup.
Yeah.
I'd obviously like it to be Hearts, and I think I think in a season where both Celtic and Rangers have shown that they are beatable, that's not, like, we've got to the final quite a few times in recent seasons, so, and if we get to a final this time, this would probably present one of our best opportunities to actually go in and win the trophy.
A legitimate win this time.
Yeah, but yeah, exactly. But our first legitimate one since 1998. But even then, we were spending a bit and went in about £20 million worth of debt with the Bank of Scotland. But anyway,
all the best clubs do it. It's fine.
But if it's not Hearts, then neither Celtic or Rangers doing it, because I want all those tasty European trips again, and it would be very bloody Hearts to fuck it last year, to do it this year in style, finishing third, and then to have, I don't know. Imagine Aberdeen win the cup. Aberdeen or Hibs winning the cup would just make me sick, absolutely sick. So anything but that.
Great Warren then.
I think that'll do us. Thank you very much for listening. If you like what you hear, please subscribe to the Patreon, patreon.com/Terrace Podcast. I would just also like to say as well before we finish, obviously we released the podcast last week, the special announcement where we told the world that I am now doing this as part of my full-time job. I just want to say a very heartfelt thank you to everybody who reached out, said some very nice things, be it via Twitter, be it through email, through WhatsApp, through Instagram, through our Discord chat. Really means a lot to me. Thank you very much to everybody. I've still got a few people to get back to and to thank them for their nice words. But yeah, just wanted to say that, and I think that'll do us for now. Gary.
Thanks for having me.
Graeme.
Bye.
I'm Craig Fowler, and we will be back again later this week with, hopefully barring any call-offs, another lower league show with Sean and Telfer. Goodbye.